Hey teens, welcome to our lesson for today. We're going to be going and talking about God delivers his people. And the main point is God protects his people from Pharaoh, the Egyptians, his whole army, all that to do in a mysterious way. And the doctrine that we're going to be talking about is God is omnipotent. Or a better way to think of it is I always call it omnipotent. And I know people cringe whenever I say that, but I need to hear the word potent because I think of back in the dorm room at college and some people's clothes that they would not wash for weeks, and it stunk so bad. It was potent. It was strong. Strong odor. Potent. It was a killer. Boom. Smack you right in the face. I mean, you'd enter some dorm rooms, boom. You could smell it from rooms away. It was so potent. Now, why am I getting it? It's because the strength from it, okay? The idea of the strength, the omnipotent, omnipotent, it's all powerful, okay? And God doesn't stink, okay? But I'm just talking about the potency of God in the matter of strength, okay? So as we get into this, think of a story where the underdog wins, okay? If you watch the Facing the Giants movie, I mean, that's a Christian movie, and underdog wins there. Overcomer, underdog wins against all odds, and yet they win. What happens? Well, here's a real story. Over in Dunkirk during World War, they had a bunch of Allied forces that were basically surrounded over at Dunkirk. Quite a few men, all right? Like thousands and thousands of men. And all of a sudden, in order to rescue them, there was over 800 military and civilian vessels that actually went across, got them, and rescued them. There was a lot of people that were lost, but over 330,000 men were saved in the midst of this. And you think, wow, against all odds, they were able to do that and save so many. So what happens here is that we get back in Exodus, and when God led them out of Egypt, he didn't take the direct route because they weren't ready to battle with the Philistines yet. So he takes them an indirect route to prove that he's bigger and better than anything that's out there and to increase their faith. You say, how does he do that? Well, he basically puts them in a position strategically that's horrible for if you were to be in a battle. They go up against the Red Sea, and it's just surrounded. It's not a great spot. Pharaoh changes his mind and chases after him. You find Exodus 14, and if you go there, Exodus chapter 14, we'll find some input on this story. And it says there in verse 1, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before," there's a big word there that's hard to pronounce, "between Migdol and the sea, over against," another big word that I can't really pronounce, "before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness, and has shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them, and I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord," and they did so. So here he is, go set it up and make it look so bad that Pharaoh wants to attack and take back his slaves. So that's exactly what they did. And God saves them. You say, why are they put in such a horrible predicament? And the answer is, God proves his strength in the midst of our weakness. Because we've got a whole bunch of weakness, okay? All throughout life. And yet he proves himself over and over again that he is whom they should be trusting. Not Moses in the midst of saving them, okay? It's not some human being that saved them. It's God. And so you have to come back to this moment and understand that we're seeing God's strength in the midst of our weakness. Okay? He brought them here to increase their faith. And he's not only their offense, but he's their defense. Okay? So as soon as the Egyptians come, and listen, they're led through the wilderness. God's already been proving himself on the journey, where God leads them by a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire during the night. So they know where to go because God's leading them along this path. But they see this dust up storm in the distance and find out it's Egypt. And guess what they do? They automatically turn on God and Moses. They automatically think, oh, we're going to die. We're going to die. And we should have just stayed in Egypt. We would have been better off there. Really? Pharaoh was killing your firstborn males. You would have been better off? I mean, that's just a thought process that all of a sudden our fears start to justify things that aren't justifiable. It just isn't reasonable. God's already proved himself by conquering all the false gods that Egypt would have had. All these plagues set them free after 400 years. And here they are, they're already turning against God and Moses. You know how many times do we react the same way in the midst of our fear? Where we turn against God, we question him and who he is. How many of my friends have done that? How many of your friends? How many of you have turned against God and his church because you're afraid? It doesn't make sense. God's proven himself over and over and over again. And we have to trust in him. He's not only the offense, but he's the defense. How so? Well, as we continue to read, we'll see that God places himself in between the Egyptians and the Israelites so that they can't attack until this plan goes through. But Exodus 14:13 through 14, it says, And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today. The Egyptians whom ye have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. Okay, you see these Egyptians, but they're going to be gone here pretty soon. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. He'll fight for you. He's going to be your offense, and he's already been the defense. Okay, you shoot down to verse 21, and it says, And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. Okay, so he divides the water, dry land, no mud to walk through, dry land. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. Can you imagine looking over and seeing fish swim through? I mean, it'd be pretty cool to watch, but I think they were probably pretty focused on getting moving through, okay? They wanted to cross that sea. All right, and then verse 26, it says, And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, the waters may come again upon the Egyptians. So they made it safely across. And he says, Stretch out your arms across the sea again, upon their chariots, upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh. They came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. What? So Israel makes it safely through. Not one person is lost in the midst of this battle. They didn't even have to raise a sword. This was no trained army. They didn't have to raise one sword. They didn't have to shoot one arrow. They made it safely across. Boom, waters come across, drown the Egyptian army right there in its wake. This is one of the most powerful empires in existence at this point. And yet God made them as if they were nothing. Boom. Wow. And that's exactly how Israel responded. They responded in song and worship, claiming he's salvation, claiming he's the strength, their shield, all these things. I mean, it just, boom. This is who our God is. This is who we get to serve. He's our offense and our defense. He's omnipotent. He can do anything that he wants to do according to his character. I mean, obviously he can't sin, but yet he is strong and can do the unthinkable. And that wasn't the thought process. That wasn't what they were thinking about in the midst of all that. They thought that the Red Sea was boxing them in and they can't do anything, and yet God split it. And here we find a miracle. A complete miracle. So how is this a complete picture of the gospel? A clear picture of the gospel? First, they were under bondage because of Egypt. They were given total grace, something that they didn't deserve when they turned against God, and yet he freed them anyway. And there was a mediator, Moses, who acted as the one who put out his arms in order to divide the waters. What happens in the gospel? Bondage to sin. There's total grace. For by grace are ye saved through faith. It's not of yourselves. Not anything you could do. No works. It's total grace. It's a gift of God. And then there's a mediator, Jesus Christ, who went to the cross for you and for me. What are you going to do about that? Are you saved? If not, today could be your day. If so, why don't you just thank God for all that he's done for you? And he's proven himself over and over again. And look back to all that God's done for you. Saving you. Keeping you. Your offense and defense. In your weakness, his strength is made perfect. We could see it clearly. God is bigger than me. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you're challenged. Talk to you later.